So this pencast is on the order of operations, and what we're going to do in this video is just review the order of operations. What are they, and then how do you recognize them? So the first step in the order of operations is to perform all operations within grouping symbols, and this is important. It says perform all operations within grouping symbols, and this is how you separate step 1 from step 2. So grouping symbols can be parentheses, they can be hard brackets, they can be curly brackets, they can be square root signs, or they could be absolute value signs. So for instance, if I had something like 3 minus, and then in parentheses, 1 plus 5. I would know that since the parentheses are a grouping symbol, I have to perform this operation of addition that's contained inside the grouping symbol. So I would have to first do 1 plus 5, which is 6. So that would give me 3 minus 6. And 3 minus 6 is the same as 3 plus negative 6, because we do our addition of the opposite. And 3 plus negative 6 is negative 3. But parentheses aren't the only grouping symbols. So I could have something like 7 minus the square root of 21 plus 4. Now the square root is acting like a grouping symbol, and there's this operation to perform within that grouping symbol, 21 plus 4. So I would have to do that before I could do this subtraction. So we would have 7 minus the square root of 25. And then in step 2, as we'll talk about, we now want to evaluate that square root. And the square root of 25 is 5. So I'd have 7 minus 5. And 7 minus 5 is 2. The other thing you want to remember about grouping symbols is that they can be embedded. So I may have something like this: 2 plus bracket 3 minus parenthesis 9 plus 2 parenthesis bracket. If I have something like this, then the parentheses are embedded within this outer set of brackets. And we want to work from the innermost to the outermost. So the first thing I'd have to do is this 9 plus 2. So we do 2 plus, and then in parentheses, or keep my bracket, and then 3 minus, and now this 9 plus 2, which is 11. Next, I'd say, okay, well, these brackets are still a grouping symbol, and I have an operation to perform inside that grouping symbol. Well, minus positive 11 is the same as plus negative 11. So now I've got 3 plus negative 11, which is negative 8. So I've got 2 plus negative 8. And since it's just a single negative 8, you could keep your brackets around the negative 8 if you wanted to, but it doesn't really change the number. So we can drop them once there's no more operations. And now we say 2 plus negative 8, which is negative 6. So we always perform all operations within grouping symbols first. Once all of our grouping symbols are done, we do all the exponents, square roots, and absolute values that are contained in the equation. So remember, exponents are things like 2 to the power of 3, for instance. Square roots look like this. So the square root of 4, which is 2. And absolute values have these absolute value bars. So say the absolute value of 5, for instance. So say we had something that looked like this. 2 minus the absolute value of negative 5 plus square root of 16 times 3 plus, let's do 3 squared. So there's no operations contained inside grouping symbols in this expression, but there are some exponents, square roots, and absolute values that we need to evaluate. And we want to evaluate them all. We don't want to leave step 2 until we've gotten rid of all the exponents, square roots, and absolute values. So we would say, okay, this is 2 minus the absolute value of negative 5 is 5, plus the square root of 16 is 4, times 3 plus 3 to the power of 2 is 3 times 3, which is 9. When I'm done performing step 2, there should be no exponents, square roots, or absolute values left in my expression. And if I look at it, 2 minus 5 plus 4 times 3 plus 9, there's no more square roots, exponents, or absolute values left. At this stage, what you have to do is step 3. We'd be looking for any multiplication or division as it occurs from left to right. So when I scroll from the left to the right, the first thing I encounter is this minus, 2 minus 5. So I'm going to skip that. And then I come to a plus, and I'm going to skip that. But right here, I have a 4 times 3, and I want to do that operation. So I get 2 minus 5 plus 4 times 3 is 12 plus 9. Now I don't have any multiplication or division in the problem, so I would have to go on to addition and subtraction. So I'm going to do my addition and subtraction the same way, from left to right. So the first thing I encounter is this 2 minus 5, which is the same as 2 plus negative 5, and that's going to give me negative 3, plus 12, plus 9. The next one, going from left to right, I come to negative 3 plus 12, which is 9. So I have 9 plus 9. So finally I do my 9 plus 9, which gives me 18. So the first step in the order of operations is to perform all operations within grouping symbols. Next we're going to perform all exponents, square roots, and absolute values. When we don't have any more exponents, square roots, or absolute values left, we do multiplication and division as it occurs from left to right. So if I have something like 7 plus 3 divided by 3 times 4 minus, let's say, 15 divided by 5 times 2. I know that the first thing I would do is all operations that are within grouping symbols, but there's no grouping symbols in here. So then I would evaluate any exponents, square roots, or absolute values, but there's none of those in here either. So now I'm going to do my multiplication and division as it occurs from left to right. So I'm going from the left to the right, and I'm looking for the first multiplication or division I find. And when I go from the left to the right, the first thing I find is this division, 3 divided by 3, which is 1. So I have 7 plus 3 divided by 3 is 1 times 4 minus 15 divided by 5 times 2. Once again, I'm going to scroll from the left to the right looking for a multiplication or division, and I find one here. So that means that I have to do 1 times 4, which is 4. So I have 7 plus 1 times 4 is 4 minus 15 divided by 5 times 2. And now I've still got multiplication or division in my problem, so I scroll from the left to the right looking for a multiplication or division. And I find one right here. 15 divided by 5. And I'm going to say that's 15 divided by 5 is 3. So 7 plus 4 minus 3 times 2. And I'm going to carry this over here. So that gives me 7 plus 4 minus 3 times 2. Again, I scroll from the left to the right, and this here, 3 times 2, is my last multiplication or division. So I have 7 plus 4 minus 6. Now I don't have any multiplication or division left, and that's when I go to step 4. And that's doing all addition and subtraction as it occurs from left to right. So I go from the left to the right, and I do the first addition or subtraction that I find. And that's 7 plus 4, which is 11, minus 6. And then the last thing I have to do is 11 minus 6, which is 5. So to recap, step 1 is we perform all operations within grouping symbols. Once we have no more operations to perform within grouping symbols, step 2, we perform all exponents, square roots, and absolute values. Once all of our exponents, square roots, and absolute values are gone, we perform all multiplication and division as it occurs from left to right. Once we have no more multiplication and division left, at this point all we should have is addition and subtraction. We perform all addition and subtraction as it occurs from left to right. So for instance, if I have 7 minus 4 plus 3 plus 9 minus 8. I go from the left to the right, and I do the first subtraction or addition that I see. So the first subtraction or addition that I see is 7 minus 4, which is 3, plus 3 plus 9 minus 8. Now I start over, and I go from the left to the right. And the first one I encounter is 3 plus 3, which is 6, plus 9 minus 8. Once again, I go from left to right, and I do the first addition or subtraction that I see, which is 6 plus 9, which is 15, minus 8. And finally, 15 minus 8 is 7.